Hey, friends. Welcome to Dishing on Divorce Next Chapter, WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Radio, Podcasts, and TV. I am your host, Lisa Lisser, CEO and founder of LZL Coaching, a boutique coaching firm focused on divorce, relationships, and life transitions. I'm also a divorced mom of 3 now grown kids. And as a recovering lawyer, a current educator, a spiritual counselor, and a divorce coach, I'm committed to transforming the divorce experience for everyone involved. Part of creating that transformation involves finding the right professionals to build your divorce support team. Many post-divorce or in the process of divorcing moms focus on building a peaceful environment for their kids, but feel stuck because they have to let go of control over what happens at their co-parents' homes. And this is true for fathers too. But we know that the kids are struggling with changes of moving back and forth from one parent's house to the other. And sure, when I was going through divorce, people said, oh, your kids are tough, they'll adjust. But you know what? It's not that easy. Kids can feel like footballs being punted back and forth. And that's not how any of us want our kids to feel. We need continuity between homes to feel safe, to feel like our kids will feel safe, and to conquer some of the chaotic changes that everyone is facing. Maybe the best way to accomplish this peace is by sharing a nanny between homes. How does that work? Who interviews who? How can you possibly find someone who will get the okay from both parents who may still be fighting and processing the pain and grief of divorce? Now, this is the sweet spot and expertise of today's guest, Brynn Ungerleider, CEO and founder of the Premier Nanny Network. Welcome, Brynn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here and to have you on Dishing on Divorce Next Chapter. Now, your specialty is something that many people don't automatically think about as divorce support. But I can't think of anything that is more supportive during the divorce process. So tell us a little bit more about that and your why you began this journey as a professional nanny and household manager.
Well, I started as a nanny to afford CDs at the mall to age myself immediately. And I couldn't believe that parents would pay me to hang out with their children, play games, eat macaroni and cheese, and get paid for it. And that quickly morphed into an ability to work with my school schedule as I went into high school and then into college. And it was a great way for me to afford books, curriculum, all of those wonderful things. But in the background of all of that, aside from making money, I realized how important this work is with children. And I'm also the child of divorce. My parents did not have a very civil divorce and still to this day do not speak to one another 23 years
Oh,
later. And throughout my career and behind my why, I've quickly realized that I've grown into the person I needed when I was younger, when my
yeah.
parents were divorcing. And I wish so much that I had someone like me to support and guide and, help me through those changes and challenges that I experienced. And throughout my career, I've been able to work with children that are also, going through divorce or have had their parents divorce or even lost a parent. And it seems like the common denominator is always a struggle for those children. And it really boosted my, confidence in this area to start my agency, despite all the fear and, being worried about it not working. I just kept my head to the ground and said, my entire purpose is to help these children while they navigate divorce. And so here I am, a year and a half in. And, for all of you clients that I've worked with that are possibly listening, thank you so much for putting your trust in me. And for those of you that are on the fence, I hope this episode helps you make the best decision for your family and for your children.
Yeah, that is brilliant. It's really, really important to recognize that it's the kids who matter the most. So often people lose sight of that, and they're not trying to lose sight of it. In their hearts, they know that the kids need to be at the center of everything, but somehow the fight and the fear and the anger gets in the way. And that's why having a third party neutral who is fun and an educator and kind and compassionate and caring, who goes with the child both places or the children. That's so important. So I'm going to ask you some of the details about like how this all works. Or actually tell us about your Premier Nanny Network. Like where are you? Like we see your beautiful background. Tell us about that.
So I'm located in Colorado, in a town called Carbondale, just outside of Aspen. I've lived here for 13 years. I'm from North Carolina. I've lived in California. I went to school in Oregon. And, I kind of started this business locally just to help local moms here navigate their divorce and their, whatever, you know, struggles that they're facing with their families. And through the urging of friends and family, I pushed myself to go nationwide. So now I'm capable of working with families all across the nation. And with that being said, in my over 20 years as being a professional nanny and household manager, I have networked with some truly amazing professionals, anywhere from California to New York, Maine, Florida, everywhere. And there's so many of us out here that truly have a passion for helping children, that truly have a passion for working with parents to help keep that homeostasis in your home so that you have time for yourself, your children are supported, and in these co-parenting journeys, everyone is feeling like they have a space and are heard and are being, met with that opportunity to feel love.
Yeah, that's really powerful. We don't always talk about love, the four-letter word, right? Because
Right.
that's what we want to accomplish in our homes. And the word we often feel during divorce is fear.
True.
And so when the fear is guiding us and the love is under there, the love is part of the fear. But
Absolutely.
it's hard to bring that into the whole dynamic, especially when you don't really have homeostasis. So how do you find that? And, one of the things I asked you when we first met was, how do you build a network nationally of nannies that, you need to vet them and meet them and all of that before you can refer them. So how does that all work?
That's really fun, and it's kind of the part of my profession here that I truly enjoy is that I'm constantly networking with these nannies across the nation, and just through normal conversation, how can I support you today, or what are you experiencing? And there's a lot of nanny boards out there where we're constantly communicating with one another about the industry and the roles that we're in and the positions that we're holding and how we can come together collectively to make this industry better, not only for us but for our clients and ultimately the children that we are serving. And so it kind of is just a happy little network of us across the country that are chatting on any and all platforms just to kind of brainstorm with one another. And for those of us like myself that have been in the industry for several decades, we've seen drastic changes from when I first started to how the industry is today. And it's just a lot of that is because of the communication between all of us professionals. Those of us that are really taking the time to sit down and go, this isn't working. What can we do to make it better? And, coming together as a collective to make those changes has been very empowering for our side of the industry.
Right, I'm sure. And so when you talk about it, I was someone in the nanny market 20 plus years ago. And so how would you say things have changed? Because it was scary back then to sort of like relinquish my children. And that
Mhm.
was before I got divorced. So I wasn't in the same space. We had sort of felt like the kids were old enough. We didn't need a nanny anymore. And it was hodgepodge, that was part of it. So tell us, how has the industry changed?
So, 20 years ago, I was finding families on Craigslist and meeting with them. That was kind of the hot spot. And throughout the last couple of years, we have some really big players, platforms out there, care.com or Sitter City. And, there's been a lot of revolution on our side of things to steer away from these larger platforms because we're finding that nannies are really not being taken care of.
Mm,
Care.com actually has a lawsuit because they weren't uh, being honest about the positions that were being offered from the clients.
mm,
So a lot of the nannies that I talk to that are heavy professionals and this is their life, they're not on these platforms anymore. Now they're shifting to agencies, which is interesting because when I started, I didn't want to work with an agency. Back then, agencies would take money from me for the position. If I got paid $25 an hour, they would want $2 or $3 off of that. And so I didn't feel like that was fair when I was doing all the work and I was the boots on the ground. And so it really helped me create a platform for myself through Premier Nanny Network to charge a fee to the family. And, a lot of that comes down to my vetting process, which, speaks for itself. And you can find that information on my website. I'm happy to go into it further. But in terms of the industry and how much it's changed, it has truly skyrocketed, especially in these last several years of, nannies that are trying to find these, unicorn families and families trying to find their unicorn nannies. And we're all out here existing, but we're having a really big disconnect on which platform to use. And so, agencies are really the bread and butter or the golden nugget of this industry right now because of the practices that we're performing, because of our vetting process. My background check standards are above and beyond what most agencies offer because at the end of the day, I really care about your children. I have come into positions after horror stories of what's happened to children, either through neglect or other forms of abuse. And it really pushed me to elevate the services in which I offer. And I think that we're just starting to see a huge change in the industry regarding these services and these vetting and the background checks that typically you wouldn't see 20 years ago. I'm sure you didn't have any of that happening when you looked for a nanny.
No. And so back then it was more like, well, I don't need this person anymore. Would you like to use her? Or again, so-and-so's cousin is coming into the country. How about? And so it was a very different kind of model. And yes, you're still so concerned because these are your kids, but you have to take a leap of faith.
You do.
When you use Premier Nanny Network, some of that is relieved, right?
Absolutely.
You're doing so much of the vetting. So
yes.
Tell me more about, who are the parents who are reaching out to you?
It's all across the board. Typically parents are, anyone from owning their own businesses. Both parents own a business, they own their own separate businesses, they work together. I've talked with mothers that are stay-at-home moms and, and they have 5 kids and their dad or the father, he's a surgeon and he's traveling around giving talks and she just really needs an extra set of hands. I also talk with parents that are, just struggling through their co-parenting journey. A lot of that recently, especially with the divorce world. And, a lot of contentious divorces specifically are reaching out to me because, there's that fear component you talked about. And I see a lot of gatekeeping, which is a very hot topic in the divorce world, where parents are kind of doing their best to put a gate down to keep their children at their house. And as an example, a mom is doing her best to keep the children full custody with her because she just doesn't trust what her ex-husband's doing at his home. And so, through those relationships, I've helped kind of, chip away at that fear and bring up more of that love, like we talked about before, and know that with a nanny brought into that position, when the children go to your ex-husband's house, the nanny's going to be there to make sure routines are followed, structure is offered, they're being fed, put to bed at a certain time. And it's really interesting. And it's been really fun for me on my side of things to kind of hear from these clients and see how well they're doing down the road after hiring a nanny and how grateful they are because, in the beginning, when I talk with them, they're so full of fear and just, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And then, a couple months down the line, I'm so glad I did this. I'm so glad that I worked with you. I'm so glad we hired, Samantha or whoever they hired to come be with their family. And a lot of what I focus on are long-term matches to make sure that when these families reach out to me, they are, they're going to have somebody that's going to grow with their family. They're going to have, this nanny that's going to see their children not only grow, alongside them, but they're going to be there to help you with your co-parenting journey. They're going to know that, between you and your ex-husband, things are not always going to be butterflies and sunshine rainbows, but they're there to make it the best they can. And I think it's just been a really wonderful result all across the board.
Yeah, it sounds like it is.
Yes.
So how does it work when divorcing couples are hiring a nanny? Like, do both parents interview? Is there like a process? So you have to say yes to this number of questions, or like, how does that work?
So I ask and let the parents kind of lead that conversation. So for the really, disgruntled exes that don't really want to speak to one another, I can kind of talk with both of them. And I prefer that so that they know that I'm not picking your ex-wife's side or your
Mhm.
ex-husband's side, just like I was when I was a nanny and I was a neutral party in many household, which is such an intimate position. I can still do that from where I am here in the beautiful state of Colorado. And I meet with both parents if they're open to it. Sometimes I think I've had one client so far where the ex-husband really didn't want to talk with me. He was like, whatever she wants, just make it happen. I don't want to listen to her, those kinds of
Right.
opportunities. So I interview with the parents. I make sure that we are on the same page. I figure out what their dream nanny or household manager would look like. And we kind of tick away at their wish list. And, it kind of helps set me up for success, which is always what I'm trying to do. And then after that, I, send over my contract and I have a non-refundable deposit of $350 in a contract to make sure that they're committed to this situation. And then I get to work and I start networking. I start pinging my nannies. I say, hey, I have a family in New Jersey that's looking for a full-time, live out nanny. Here are some specifications. You have to have a driver's license. You're going to be driving the kids. They're going to want to have X, Y, and Z. You're going to have to do housekeeping or no housekeeping. All of these things that a lot of
Mhm.
people really don't think about, because why would you? If you're not in the world of nannies, why would you
Right.
consider these things?
Right.
And then I get to work, I find their nanny, I introduce them to at least three options for them to make their decision. And sometimes the parents want to each interview that nanny, especially if they're in separate households. Sometimes, again, in this one example, the mom kind of took over everything because she had the kids most of the time.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, the nanny still met with the dad to make sure everybody was comfortable with one another. I recommend, after we sign contracts and all of that's taken care of, to do a working interview as well, to kind of make sure everybody feels comfortable with everyone in their space. And then, I do a trial period too of, 30 to 60 days, depending on what the family would like, to make sure that nanny is working out for you. And if they're not, I'll find you somebody else. That's my
Yeah.
guarantee. I want to make sure at the end of the day, I'm offering you consistency, reliability, and professionalism through these trusted caregivers. And, at the end of the day, so far so good. I feel really good about the people I've paired and matched together. And, no job is ever perfect. No person is ever perfect. And even if you're working with a family that's wonderful, or if you're working with a nanny that's wonderful, there's always going to be little things in there that you're going to have to work through. And
Right.
I offer continued support there too. I'm not like, okay, well, you have your nanny, bye. No, call me. Even
Yeah.
if it's months down the line, you're like, hey, I'm having issues with communicating with Samantha, that I really don't want her to be wearing her shoes in the house. And I've told her and she's not listening. I can come in and go, hey, Samantha, how
This
are
is
things
the house
going?
rule. Right.
These are the house rules. And, fortunately, I haven't had to do anything like that. But I do have parents that reach out and like, how do I communicate this? I'm like, oh, that's a great question. Let's figure out how to do this and work together. And
Yeah.
even if it's a year down the road, give me a call. I'm happy to help you, because at the end of the day, your children are what I care about the most. I'm not going to
Yeah.
lie to any of you. I love working with moms and dads. I love working with nannies. But at the end of the day, I love making sure your children are going to be supported, because, again, that's what I needed when I was growing up.
Right. Right. It's about the kids. So we're going to take a 30-second break for a spot from our sponsor. And when we're back, we will talk more with Brynn Ungerleider. And we're back with Brynn Ungerleider, Premier Nanny Network. So, Brynn, let's really talk about details. Part of the fear some people have with divorce and with hiring staff, as it were, is the money, is the finances.
True.
So, how do you help people go through sort of that mental process that this financial investment is an essential one for family harmony?
That's a great question. And it's something that I talk about often, especially on all my social media. I kind of broke it down in hours instead of money, because if you
Mhm.
look at it in terms of what you're doing per week to keep your household running, the average parent is spending roughly 50 to 60 hours a week on all of these mundane tasks that don't directly affect your children, like being a mom or dad, because you can't replace being a mom or dad, but you
Yeah.
can replace, sending those errands to someone else or having someone else do the laundry or do meal prep. And so to me, after my basic math, I found that the average parent spends roughly 50 to 60 hours a week doing these other tasks, laundry, cooking, cleaning, and all of these things. And if you can take that time and hand it off to someone else, you just gained 50 to 60 hours in your week to either spend time with your children or spend time on yourself, which after divorce, we all know is such a crucial piece of healing and becoming the person that you're meant to be after this devastating change in your life or this huge change in your life. And so the other piece that I like to also bring up as well is when parents share a nanny, it's incredibly cost effective because you're both paying for this nanny versus just one family that's making the costs, cost analysis benefits and all of these things toward that nanny. Each of you can also pay into it. And the best part, especially, for those that are undergoing a not so civil co-parenting journey, is that you can both pay the nanny separately. I did have a father at one point say that he didn't want to give the money to his ex-wife for her to pay the nanny because he didn't trust her to do that. Fine, you can pay the nanny her salary based on what you're paying her for her to spend the time at your house during that scheduled,
Yeah.
week. And I'm seeing a lot of benefit just in that kind of structure system where each parent's paying the nanny. So, a lot of the parents out there that I work with that are not divorced, they're overseeing 100% of that cost. Whereas if you have two separate households, each household is paying, 50% depending on the custody schedule. And that really helps a lot with,
Yeah.
breaking down the cost system of hiring a nanny.
That makes a lot of sense, and I don't think people think about that at the beginning. And
No.
as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about what goes into a marital settlement agreement when you're talking about the costs associated with the kids and all the extracurricular that you're listing, the varsity jackets and the
Yes.
equipment and the clothes and the medicine and the computer well, on that same list, you can have nanny.
Yes, absolutely. Or household manager if your children are older and they don't
Yeah.
need as much support, but you do and your ex needs it as well. Same thing.
Yeah. I mean, a household manager can be the admin assistant that you
Yes.
need, that all of
Yes.
us need to run our lives, right? Like that
Absolutely.
seems so powerful. Um, I'm also wondering, do you have any stories that you would say this one is a success story or this family was in crisis, but we helped bring them out?
I nannied for a family long, long ago that was divorced, and they did not speak to one another. The dad did have an affair, and it really destroyed the mom, and her entire world was just shaken. And I came in pretty shortly after the divorce paperwork, was finalized, and it was just, and I hope she's listening. Hi. It was a mess when I stepped in because there was so much chaos. It just seemed like the world was in upheaval. They were trying to figure out these new structures, and they had two children, a little boy and a little girl. And the example I'm going to share with you today is about the little boy forgetting his soccer cleats at the dad's house, and he had a big soccer game. And, you know, the mom was very upset. She's like, I can't go get those cleats from his house. He doesn't let me in his home. I don't know the codes. I don't know the passwords, but you do. Can you go there? Can you get those cleats? And I said, absolutely. But I'm going to contact him first because I'm not technically supposed to be at his house this week. It's my week to be with you. And so, I called the dad. We'll call him John in this example. I called John. I said, hey, John, your son forgot his soccer cleats at your home. He has a big game today, as you know. I know you can't make it because you're busy. Is it okay if I go by your home and grab those cleats for your son? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just don't want my ex-wife going. I said, okay, that's fine. She's not going to be with me. I'm going to go by myself. So I was able to come in a little bit earlier that day
Mhm.
to kind of help with the chaos. I went to his house, to John's house, got those cleats, which were by the back door, of course, in the mudroom, and met them at that soccer game. And everybody I could see a collective because the crisis was removed. And I think that the big piece here to keep in mind is that there's the smallest things that happen in these co-parenting journeys that can completely derail all of the planning and all of the structure that you think you've put together. It's something as little as soccer cleats or a
Mhm.
tutu that really can disrupt everything that you think that you have going for you. And in this instance, I was able to kind of bring those cleats over. Everybody was happy. He had a great soccer game. The dad was happy that his ex-wife didn't go to his home, and the ex-wife was happy she didn't have to interact with her ex-husband at all. Um, there are other examples I have where I've, had children confide in me. I do a lot of play, obviously, with these kids and do my best to keep them entertained and stimulated with enrichment activities, behavioral activities. And there was one little girl I worked with, and they had a lot of dogs. So I would take their dogs for a walk, toward the end of my shift for that day to make sure everybody was getting the attention they needed.
Yes.
She would join me for those walks. And I remember one day she joined me, and she opened up in tears just about how sad she was. She felt like her
Mhm.
whole family and her whole world had just fallen apart. And at the time she was 11. And I thought those were such big, wonderful emotions for her to have and to share with me. But my heart really broke for her because at the end of that conversation, she said, "Please don't tell my parents." And so, as a nanny in these situations, and for you parents listening, part of that fear of bringing someone in are these conversations where we're privy to a lot of information that your children may not share with you because they're also scared. They're also led by fear. And, I told her at that time, I said, "I'm not going to talk to your parents about this, but I would like for us to find a way for you to talk to your parents about this because it's important for them to know how you're feeling. And I don't think you need to be scared because guess what? Your parents love you so much. And that's so clear in how they handle your day to day, everything you have going for you. And I know that the world seems a little scary because your life just had a really big change. You have two houses, two Christmases, two birthdays, and your parents are really, asking a lot of you right now to help them on their journey through this change. And I want you to know that I'm here to support you. But I think the best thing to do is to open that conversation to your parents. And so the next week I came to work, she pulled me aside and said, "I'm ready to talk to my mom and dad about our conversation." I said, "That's great. Do you want me to go with you?" She said, "Yes, I want you to sit with me so that I can tell them how I feel." And we had a great conversation that day, Lisa. It was so productive. The parents had no idea how she was feeling because she had kept it bottled in for so long that they were all hugging and crying and so happy after. And after that, everybody was able to adjust to kind of help this little girl navigate this change in a way more productive manner that probably wouldn't have happened if she hadn't
Yeah.
opened up to me. And those are, that's pretty much a consistent feedback loop I get from children when they're going through these big changes, that they are going to talk to your nannies. And the nannies I speak to and I work with and I train in these roles, we really push for them to help the children communicate to all of you to know what's going on in their world.
That's so, so important. Like you told me that story and I got goosebumps because it's so powerful. We don't know what's going on inside our kids' heads.
No,
And they're afraid to tell us for lots of different reasons.
absolutely.
Not just because they don't want us to get mad, but also because they don't want us to feel bad. They don't want us to feel guilty that they're not feeling great, even though they're not feeling great.
And they
And
also
so,
see you struggling with your
yeah,
situation, and they really don't wanna add to that.
yeah. When so many people say, like, don't let the kids get involved, like the kids are involved.
Absolutely.
It's 100%. It's because it impacts their lives. And
Absolutely.
and that's also where, with the co-parenting work that I do in training parents and helping facilitate their own learning, it's like your fight that you think is for the benefit of your kids because you're fighting for your kids is really sabotaging your why, which is to safeguard your kids. So
100%.
how do we build this cohesive, you know, unit that each part, the nanny, the kids, the parents, learn different communication techniques so they can support each other. And your story really shared like huge support. Like not every child is going to feel that kind of bond. And I could see it clearly with you. And I am sure that the nannies that you train, you're also training them to have these skills.
Absolutely. I am working on finalizing a divorce training program booklet for a lot of the nannies I connect with just to kinda give them a little bit more insight into this world. While a lot of nannies are already working in this world, it's a little added buffer of just how to
Mhm.
remain neutral, how to support the children. And, the whole point of my training program, of course, is kids are first. Everything else after that, we'll figure it out along the way.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, the children are first. Whatever they need, however you can support them, do that.
Yeah, that's huge. And it's what the parents want, right? The
Yes,
parents want the children to be first. So
absolutely.
so tell me more. Like you told us some excellent, amazing stories. Um, when have you ever seen a situation where a child went through a divorce and they were like completely unaffected? Or is it just like that? I think is like hard to imagine.
Nope, not a single one. I have seen very civil co-parenting strategies and setups, and I still see behavioral issues in the children. It's
Mhm.
just such a big change for such a young mind to comprehend. And I think the best way to put it into words for all of your listeners is that these are adult situations that are being put onto young minds. And it's,
Mhm.
a really big piece of a journey for them to try and navigate how to get through it when they're just trying to be a kid. They're just trying
Yeah,
to they're just trying to thrive and have fun and play with their friends and, play Barbies, GI Joes,
yeah,
finagle their way to get more iPad time, whatever it be. They don't care that you and your ex-husband are not getting along. Well, they do, but they're not really waking up going, "Oh my gosh, I need to help my parents work through this." They're
right.
going, "Wow, this really sucks and I feel so lost right now and I don't know what I'm supposed to do." And I feel like the only way to really get any kind of attention is I'm going to act out.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
part of what you're sharing is just this real sense that even though the kids experience all of the dynamics and the energy that's in the fight, that's in the divorce, they also are in a self-preservation mode. So if they
absolutely.
come out and they're like, me, and you feel like they're like unaware of everything that is going on, it's probably the opposite. It's probably
Mhm.
that they're so aware of everything that's going on that they need to be self-focused. So what we see as acting out, they see as their fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. They've got to protect themselves.
Oh,
And
yes.
if that means, can I get this from mom? She says, no, I'm going to go to dad. That happens in married families too. That happens
It
in
does.
every family.
It
But
does.
but it's more intense when it's a family going through divorce.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But no, to answer your question, there isn't a single child out there that I've worked with or seen or talked to that has not been affected by divorce. And I've talked with some really wonderful parents that are very civil. They're great at co-parenting, and there's one family in particular I'm thinking of right now, and they're still seeing behavioral issues from their son, even though it's been 5 years. And I just say, hey, maybe you guys should do a family dinner night on Friday nights. When you go to pick him up for your schedule, maybe you guys should all sit down and have dinner. And since they implemented that, they've seen a decrease in his behavioral issues at school. And I think it's just because he's still really craving that interaction between both parents in the same space at the same time. And because of their ability to be civil with one another, I recommended it. Because of that. And I think it's working wonders for them. But a lot of parents are unable to do that, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean that's not right for every situation,
No,
but because you're coming in from like the third side, to use language of William Ury, you're giving a perspective that people who are in the midst of the situation, of the trauma, of the engagement, they can't see these creative options that are out here.
so
And
true.
so what you and your nannies offer is this third eye that can really see the whole picture. You go up on the
Absolutely.
balcony and you see what's going on. And
Yes,
that's like another unexpected benefit, a super value that you're
absolutely.
getting by hiring a nanny who can be at both houses.
Oh,
Like
yeah. You
that's
guys are all very close to the project, and we are not. We are here to help support your children, and we can see things. And I always tell parents, you're getting results, and if you don't like the results you're getting, you need to change how you're putting information into the system.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things where you throw stuff at the board and it sticks. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does, but when it does stick, it helps a lot.
A lot, a lot. So we're getting close to the end of our time. What advice do you have for newly divorced parents who may feel overwhelmed or guilty about asking for help?
I love that question because I talk to a lot of parents that feel very guilty when they have to ask for help. And I want to just tell all of you that there is no shame in asking for help and that we're all here to support one another. And I want to encourage all of you to remember that there are some amazing nannies out here in the country that are truly genuine, amazing, authentic human beings that have such a passion for working with children that it's okay to bring them in so that you can take some time to go work on yourself because divorce is hard. I've been divorced. It's life altering, it's life shattering. And I couldn't imagine having children going through that process. And so I just want to encourage all of you, even if you're on the fence about it, give me a call. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about where that stems from. And, definitely work with Lisa as well during your divorce journey to kind of pinpoint where that's coming from and where it's, rooted in your system. But no, there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with asking for help ever.
there really isn't. And in fact, what I share with my clients is the most courageous thing you can do is ask for help, is,
Yes.
is acknowledge that we don't know everything, but our superpower is that we, as a coach, as a nanny finder,
Mhm.
we know how to find the resources our clients need at the moment they need it. And if our clients can come and ask for help, they are taking one enormous step toward their best future.
I would
So
also add that your children are watching, and if your children see you ask for help, guess what they're gonna do when they need it?
yeah,
Mhm.
you're a role model.
You
You're
are.
a role model.
You're your child's favorite person until they're,
Yeah,
18 and they know everything, or probably
yeah.
13, but
Okay.
yes, your
Yeah.
children are watching.
Yeah. Your children are watching. That's the other thing. They see everything.
They do, and they hear everything. It's good
Yeah.
and bad.
It's good and bad. And they
Mhm.
hear not just what is said from you to them, but they hear what other people are saying
Yes.
about your ex-spouse.
Mhm.
They know if you've been communicating on a platform complaining about your spouse, it's coming out of you in other ways.
Your
So they
energy. Yes.
so they get it. So this is where having an intermediary like a nanny to help you navigate some of those really, really hard movements is so powerful.
Yes.
So Brynn, tell us again, how can my audience find you?
Well, you are welcome to go to my website, premiernannynetwork.com. Anybody's welcome to email me, premiernannynetwork@gmail.com. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Shoot me a message. Let's talk about what will work for your family. I'm here even if you decide you don't want to work with me. Let's just find a way to help support your children. That makes me happy.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Brynn.
Thank you.
And for my audience, you can always find me at lzlcoaching.com, Lisa at lzlcoaching.com. I'm here to answer questions. You're allowed to ask for help. And I bring you people who can answer the questions that you might have been afraid to ask. So, on that note, thanks for watching, and I will see you on our next Dishing on Divorce.